Hi, and thank you for joining us once again on the Pyramid Show here live on Joy News Television. This program is brought to you by kind sponsorship of Zypes Concrete Product. Our homes must serve as first point of contact for good habitat and health as we go on the journey in building construction. Architect first-hand design of a building can impact the health and well-being of its occupant. A healthy building design can attest to the benefit it can provide. On the other hand, healthy building design can promote better indoor air quality, natural lighting, and acoustic control, leading to improved health and well-being of building occupants. However, building designs can lead to a variety of health hazards, including poor air quality, mold, sick building syndrome, noise and light pollution, and even in chronic diseases. Today in Focus, we are asking ourselves, can we be in a building that is toxic to our health? We get to understand this as we go on with this discussion. We take a break. The show returns shortly. Thank you for staying with us. My name is Emmanuel Owusu Ansa. And today, like I mentioned earlier to you, our focus, we are asking ourselves, can a building become toxic to your health for the users and the occupants of the building? Joining us for this discussion, we have with us architect Dr. Joe Eje-Dankwa. He's a principal architect, also the senior research scientist for CSIR Building and Road Research Institute in Kumasi. Doc, thank you for joining us. Doc, my first question is the question, can a building become toxic to its occupant or users?
Hello. Good afternoon to your cherished listeners. I'm glad that you are discussing this topic because it's one of the key things that sometimes I call it the silent killer, okay, lurking in our homes, okay, that actually poses a lot of health hazards to us, okay, whether knowingly or unknowingly. So yes, buildings can pose as a health hazard to us. In fact, many a times, okay. So this topic, when you talk about unhealthy buildings, as some people will call it, or toxic home, you know, these are spaces, be it in our homes, be it in our places where we have a lot of our living, be it our public places or even workplaces. And sometimes the place that we spend a lot of our time with, okay, in space, you know, there are a lot of these harmful substances or chemicals that are within the interior spaces, okay, and even within the immediate surroundings that are actually harmful. And sometimes we call them volatile organic compounds. Now, these are harmful substances that, if care is not taken, okay, to arrest them or minimize their impact in the occupants, okay, spaces, definitely is going to have an effect on us. So yes, we have unhealthy buildings where we can classify it as a space or an interior space where we have harmful substances or volatile organic compounds, as sometimes we call them, okay, lurking within the interior or the immediate exterior environment.
Okay. Yeah. On that note, then I'm also asking you, yes, our cherished viewers, have you ever had the experience of being within a building that you perceive to be toxic? I mean to say, have you ever occupied a building where moving in you are healthy sound, but later on you had to be rushed to the hospital, or with time developed any strange diseases? Share with me your story and I shall be reading them on this number. You can send either an SMS or a WhatsApp on this very number, 0500 180 697, 0500 180 697. You can also add on to the discussion here by still sending us an SMS or a WhatsApp on 0500 180 697. Now, if you're looking for 2 or 3 bedrooms to buy within the heart of Accra, then look no further. Star Properties, in partnership with Advanced Construction and its construction firm, have been able to put together or develop over 100 custom-built houses, all tailored to your heart desire. You are just going to love them. Luxurious ones, exclusive ones, just for your taste. So call us now to be a part of this thriving community. And one important thing, some important points I would want you to know is that within this community, you have a 24/7 security guarantee, and also it's a gated community. We also have a high-speed internet connectivity. Above all, 3 recreational parks where you get to spend the leisure times, hours with the family and loved ones, and also experience the boat on the water. So call us on this number, 050-127-9284. 050-127-9284, or send us an email, viniglo@silverstartowers.com, viglo@silverstartowers.com. For more information and enquiries, call us or visit our website, that is www.silverstartowers.com. Hello, Doc. So, Doc, you were explaining to us situations that contribute to a house becoming a toxic home. Please go on.
Yeah, so if I can go on to, if you are looking at the probable causes, or we call them the primary causes, okay, for these kinds of harboring of harmful substances or chemicals, okay, and because I'm a building construction professional, I'll be dealing with, there are numerous causes, but I'll be dealing with specifically those that have got to do with the built environment, okay. In this way,
I believe this is just not restricted to our homes, but even at the office places, and we're talking about these, public areas as well, like the malls. Absolutely. And the churches, the mosque. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Wherever there's human occupation, okay. So whichever space that the human works, okay, in that aspect, definitely there are the presence of these harmful chemicals and then volatile organic compounds. So it can be in the hospitals, it can be in the schools, it can be in the malls or public spaces, it can even be in our churches, okay? But most of the times our homes, because that is when we spend most of our time, okay? Then whatever I'm discussing pertains to all the spaces for which human occupation takes place, okay? And they are living and then they are working, okay, in that aspect. All right. So if I can go on with the causes, you will see that for me, one of the primary causes is on the construction materials and their associated activities. Okay. Okay. When I talk about construction materials, I'm talking about anything that we use, okay, to build, okay, be it in the build envelope. If I'm talking about masonry, I'm talking about carpentry, I'm talking about roofing, I'm talking about finishes, okay. You see that the materials that are employed and applied at the construction sites, okay, up to the time we occupy, and even as we occupy it and we live in it, the things that we do within the space itself, okay, has embodied all these kinds of harmful chemicals that these materials throughout its transformation, okay. So you see that these materials that we use, okay, always undergo a certain form of transformation. With the exception of those that actually remain in their natural state, for example, stone, etc., or rustic wood, okay, for which has not been, we don't even have a preservative on them, okay. But any material that has undergone a form of transformation, okay, has some form of a harmful chemical within them, and for which these are emitted during their application, their installation, and then they are living in it, in that space. So you see that all these materials, be it paint, okay, how paints are made, there's chemicals that are applied and mixed and formed in order to even prolong its lifespan. Now you see that there are chemicals that are used, and in these kinds of preservatives and in elongating some of these, okay, even achieving a certain kind of color, there is this kind of inert harmful chemicals and volatile organic compounds that are inert in them, and that actually, okay, are emitted when these things are applied to the building, okay, in the form of construction and then maintenance or even repair work, okay. And so this, in that process, produce a lot of pollutants, and for which inadvertently, when we are not using our safety gear, will get into our lungs.
So,
and then
Doc, you would want to tell us some of these chemicals that become pollutant over time?
Yeah, for construction materials, one of the key chemicals, okay, is lead. Okay,
lead.
Lead, which is primarily found in paints. Okay,
and some of the common materials that you find lead in them.
Yes, and that is paint. In fact, that is number one. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, and then even water that we use in the homes. Okay, water that we use for construction and for everyday use. Okay, that gets into our homes also contain lead. it can be within the pipes that are carrying them. It can even be within the water source, okay, from where the water is coming from, okay, or it can even be within the home in itself, okay. So this is one of the primary causes. Of course, last week we were talking about rising dam, okay. Rising dam also contribute to some of these health hazards that we have in terms of releasing these health harmful chemicals, okay, into the atmosphere within the interior space. Here we are talking about molds and moisture, okay, which produce spores, bacteria, and fungi, and for which
So,
gets into
Doc, a
contact.
defect or a situation like this in our homes is going to, make the home toxic for us to stay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So all these things, I've just mentioned just two of the probable causes that actually are the causes of this within our homes. Okay. One key thing is about poor ventilation and indoor air quality. And this has also got to do with how we design and then build our homes in terms of our fenestration and how we engender air exchange within the interior spaces. Okay. When we have poor ventilation, this is where there's lack of air exchange, that is fresh exchange of air, okay, within our interior spaces. By this one, I'm talking about where we have single exchange, where you have just one side of your building or a space, be it your bedroom or your hall, having just one window. In that aspect, you don't have enough vents in order to exchange the air, that you have an inlet and an outlet. Because yes, the human occupation needs oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. But if you have still air within the space, then definitely you are having and then all these kinds of harmful substances getting stuck within the space. And so in all aspects, we always say that improve your ventilation and have proper air quality in that sense. Otherwise, even if there are presence of pollutants, it is in these kinds of good ventilation that these pollutants can actually escape out of your space in that aspect. Okay, we have also occupational habits and then external hazards. For external hazards, I'm talking about pollutants that as a result of our environment, when we're talking about, for example, our transportation routes, sometimes we always build and then we have closer to the roadside. So you have these kinds of vehicle emission gases also getting trapped within our spaces when we open our windows and etc. And then again, there is this natural occurring radioactive gas, which we call radion, okay, which is found everywhere on the planet, in that sense, even in Ghana here, okay. And these are within the soil that's what called with the substructure. So, for example, if you are building and then your foundation is not secure, and then you don't have enough waterproofing, then definitely, or dampproofing, then definitely you have these kinds of cracks that will develop, and then these gases will escape through these cracks, and then come into your interior space. And then long exposure to some of these things can actually even cause lung cancer, which has been proven and research has shown in that aspect. Okay. In fact, with this one, in 2019, there was a research that happened in Ghana here by Milton and Co., which actually surveyed 4 of the regions in Ghana here for the presence of radion gas within our homes, okay? For over 100 and something houses that they surveyed, 16% had this radion gas that was way above, okay, the allowable limit set by the WHO, that's the World Health Organization. So you see
Doc,
that
you mentioned 16% or 60%?
16.
16.
Yes, 16%,
Okay.
So it is something that it is lacking. You may not detect with your natural eye or even the sense of smell, but then it is present. These are things that actually are lacking within our homes, for which we need to take particular attention if we really want to eliminate some of these toxins within the interior space in our immediate environment.
Thank you very much. So, Doc, my question to our viewers, Doc just mentioned radon gas. What do you understand by radon gas? And in the course of construction of your home, your building, your apartment, did you at a point in time engage the professional to test even the presence of radon gas? If you have any of these defects he's mentioned earlier, talking about rising damp walls, you're also talking about poor ventilation, and not making sure that proper design is done even with the construction of the foundation share with me your experience. Let me know what you have to say on our SMS number or WhatsApp number 0500 180 697 0500 180 697. Doc, let me start with the radon gas you mentioned. You mentioned that according to the study, about 16% they found radon gas prevalent within those areas. But what is the study itself within Accra and the major cities? What is the situation like? Can you call certain localities or areas that, per the study, is also prevalent within those localities? I mean, the radon gas.
Because there's limited research in Ghana when it comes to radon gas within the occupational homes. In Accra, for example, the researcher was looking, he took his samples from Dome, Kwabinya. Okay, these were places that he took his samples from, okay, specifically. Of course, within these areas, you can safely say that, yes, these were within the allowable limits, okay. So you see that with all the research, if my memory will serve me right, it was only in the eastern region, okay, where he took his samples that the gases that was concentrated was way above the allowable limits, in that way. And then he went on further to talk about the possibility of why this thing, or the probable causes of why there was that prevalence, okay. And then he cited that, yes, from this, from the study area within the eastern region, that's the southeastern region, what he saw was that most of the houses that he surveyed had weak foundations, okay. In this aspect, he surveyed most from the Atakwame and then the F structures, which normally do not have this kind of fortified foundations, okay. Mm-hmm. So what he saw was these kinds of things that I was talking about, cracked substructures, and then gaps within the ground, and for which these gases escaped into the rooms in itself. And so he was saying that, for example, if the substructure itself had been fortified, definitely there was no way these gases would have risen to this kind of concentration, as he put it in that way. But then with the other areas, be it Prestia, up to even the northern region, Kasina, Nankana, and then Abri, all these places had within their allowable limits. And so there wasn't any cause for alarm, aside the one that I talked about.
Doc, would you advise that upon conceiving that you want to build a house, or probably an apartment, an office space, you need to engage a professional to run a test? And do they even run tests on this radon gas to ascertain the concentration level?
Yeah, it depends on the kind of engagement and the professional that you involve your construction with, in that way. And we always say that it is important that right from the start, engage the consultants, okay? Yes, it might be expensive for you for now, but then you think about the health implications and the consequences, okay, which sometimes result in fatalities in that aspect. So yes, if you engage the professionals, for example, if you engage the geotechnical and professional to investigate what is present in your soil, and specifically mention some of these poisonous gases, okay, or radioactive material, definitely they'll be able to help you out in terms of determining the kinds of gases that are harmful and their concentration levels. You can also involve the EPA people to also come and do this kind of assessment for you in that aspect. Even if you have built your house and you are still not sure, you can still engage these professionals, especially the EPA, to come and then have an assessment within your interior spaces. They have equipment that can actually detect some of these gases and then check you out in terms of their concentration levels and whether you are in safe hands or you are in the danger zone in that aspect.
Okay, so Doc, one will be asking, what are some of the diseases that one can develop when he or she stays within a toxic building?
It ranges from several, most of them have got to do with these respiratory diseases, okay? Apart from respiratory diseases, then you are talking about even skin rashes, okay? You are also talking about things that has got to do with, for example, cancerous diseases.
Cancer?
Lung cancer, yes, okay. Long-term exposure to what I was talking about, this radioactive gas will lead you to lung cancer, okay? We also have instances from research that we've got to do with neurological problems, okay, which has got to do with even how children develop, okay, right from the start, where they have all these kinds of problems with concentration, mood swings, and memory problems in that aspect. There are times that you are in your house, and any time that you get into this space, you are having headaches, fatigue, dizziness, and then nausea. And sometimes you are wondering where you are getting some of these things from. But perhaps there is the presence of these kinds of toxic substances within your space that are actually contributing to some of these things. Allergies are also one of the big problems when it comes to the health hazards with this kind of toxic substances, where you have hives, rashes, itches, and then watery eyes. Okay, all these things are part of those kinds of causes when it comes to some of these things. For the respiratory problems, we're talking about coughing, when you have a lot of wheezing and shortness of breath, even sometimes there is a chest tightness and then sinus problems. Okay, those with these are the ENT, ear, nose, and throat problems. All of these things are part of the things when you have a long exposure to toxic, and then depending on the amount of concentration within your interior space into contact. So these are some of the common alarm signals. Of course, it might not be that if you have this, then immediately it means that there's that presence of this, but then it is leading you, okay, to check your interior space to see whether you are doing something right or something is not wrong, something is not right, or you are doing some things wrong that needs to change in that aspect.
Okay, yeah. Doc, let's expand our discussion on these unfriendly materials, unhealthy materials we use also for the construction of our homes. You mentioned typically paint containing lead. You also spoke briefly about pipes, also possibly containing lead. We would want to know the other materials we use for the construction of our homes that can also, help us, help develop the individuals developing sickness or diseases, along the line.
Yeah. For the paint itself, one thing that you can use to detect if you are having a paint that has got lead in it, okay, it's just your sense of smell, okay. And most of the paints that we have has some particular smell, but then lead has a pungent smell, okay, has a strong smell. So if you have a paint that has a very strong smell that is unpleasant, then there's a possibility of that there's a high concentration of lead within it. Of course, Ghana has banned lead use, okay, within our space. But you see, we have all of them in many of our building materials, even asbestos, okay, which has been banned, okay, worldwide. But in Ghana here, we still use asbestos, some even use it in their building occupation, okay, which is actually something that is very harmful to the built environment. But still, people use it. You go to the market spaces, people are still using asbestos, okay, which contain a higher concentration of lead in that aspect. So yes, asbestos and paints are the leading examples. If you are talking about glazing material surprisingly also has a lot of these volatile organic compounds in them.
That is the glass we use for our windows nowadays.
Yes, the glass that we use for our windows, especially the ones that are plated and then chromed, okay, and had all these kinds of fancy colors and etc. Okay, in terms of shading and etc. These kinds of achieving these colors, okay, and the state in itself, okay, have these kind of substances and chemicals used in order to achieve some of this. Even to achieve energy efficiency and then reflectance, they use some of these volatile organic compounds, we call it the VOCs, okay, and then harmful substances in order to achieve this, okay. So the excessive exposure to even heat, in our environment here, we are in the tropics, and therefore, if you are building and you are not protecting these glazing, okay, facades, okay, from the excessive heat, definitely, then you are releasing these compounds and substances into the interior space, and for which you are also now having this kind of exposure. And the long-term exposure will definitely have an effect on you. Again, sealing plastics or anything that has got to do with plastic, be it PVC or the sealing materials that we use, some of these PVCs that we use are sealing materials, okay? all of this contain.
Doc,
PVC,
in essence, you saying TNJ, plastic TNJs. That's what.
Yes, plastic TNJs.
Plastic TNJs. Okay, for sealing.
Yeah, for sealing.
Okay.
Okay, and for any other material, building material that has got to do with, because sometimes you are not using it only for your sealing, but sometimes you are using it. Some even use it for partitioning. In that aspect. Okay, and so even the employment of this material also has got a lot of these VOCs being emitted, especially when it's subjected to heat or excessive heat. And that is what we keep on saying, that yes, you should always have this adequate ventilation, which actually reduce, okay, the kind of heat ingress that gets into your space, and thereby releasing these compounds or these organic compounds within your interior space, thereby causing these kinds of harmful substances from getting into your system. So yes, these are some of the things. For the plastics, we have the active compounds, which is phthalates and then dioxins. And dioxins is one of the most toxic materials, okay, substances that you can find, okay. But these are lurking within our plastics and PVCs. In fact, anything that is plastic has got a lot of this toxic within it. And that is why they always advise us that when you are using a plastic, avoid minimal usage of plastics because they are harmful, not only to us, but even to the environment in that aspect, So yes, these are some of the materials, even the adhesive that we use, the solvents that we use. For example, carpentry, the solvents that we are using contains elements of VOCs, okay, depending on the concentration that you have. And so always use safety gear in order to prevent some of these chemicals from inhaling into your body system, which can actually cause health hazard to you when you are due for a long exposure to that.
Okay, if you just join us, you are live here on Joy News Television. This, once again, is the Pyramid Show. We've been in a discussion with architect Dr. Joe Ejay Dankwa, senior research scientist with the CSIR, that is Building Road Research Institute in Kumasi. We take a break here. The show returns after this. Thank you for staying with us. Up next is the interactive segment.
I'm Audrey Kafidushi, and I'm here to read your views and concerns on the topic at hand. So we're discussing how buildings can become toxic to our health. You can engage us on our socials. It is Twitter @the_pyramid_show, Facebook 360mediagh.net, and on WhatsApp or via SMS. The number is 0500-180-697. Please, when you send in your comments, add your names and your location so that we can address you properly. So our first comment coming in is from Engineer Aisen from Cape Coast. I would like to know if brick houses also cause these health issues. The next one, please, may I know if there is toxic effect by using plasterboard to make your ceiling in your house? That's from Amofa from Kumasi. I'm watching the show as more educative. Thank you. This is Common Paropa. My question is, environment pollutants where toilet facilities are located closer to houses, what can we do with the smell? Good afternoon. Please, how do I know I am living in a toxic rented house? That's from Araba Saki from Somanya. So you can still engage us on our socials. It is Twitter @the_pyramid_show. WhatsApp 0500-180-697. That will be all for the interactive segment.
Thank you very much, Audrey Dushi Kafui. Thank you very much. So, Doc, let's take a look at some of the few questions that came in. One from Araba asking, within a rented place, how does she, identify that the environment or the building is toxic?
Yeah, for you to identify that your building is toxic, you should be looking at some of the signs. Some of them are visible. Some of them you need to do testing in order to find out. Okay. So, for example, if you are living in a house and then you are seeing mold growth, okay, or dampness, okay, unnecessary dampness within your walls, where you have spaces where you have fungi, which are developing bacteria within your space, then definitely you know that these are fertile grounds in order to release some of these harmful substances, okay, within the space. So that becomes a trigger for you to know that, no, my environment in itself is not that clean. Of course, you also have to look at the age of your home. I mean, here, I'm sure that most of the buildings here are beyond or were built, okay? But if you have a house that was built before 1968, okay, that was when, in fact, lead was banned, okay, worldwide, okay? And then you know very well that, for example, there's a presence of lead, okay, within your space. For example, if your home has not undergone serious renovation in terms of even the paint, sometimes you can have buildings as old as we have typically within the various old establishment or suburbs, okay, in the compound housing, etc., where you still find this presence of the old paints that are still around. Then definitely you know that there's a presence of even lead within your interior space. So the age of the building is also an important thing, okay? And also when you see that your interior finishes, for example, paints are peeling off, then definitely it's a signal that maybe the paint wasn't good in that aspect. And one of the things is that there's that presence of lead within it. So if you see your paint that's unnecessarily peeling off, then definitely there is an indication that, yes, in fact, you need to double check to find the other causes. But definitely this will not be ruled out in that aspect. And then you also have to engage a professional to just come in and test some of these, either toxicologists or the EPA to come and test some of these harmful substances for you to be able to understand and know very well the kinds of substances that you are dealing with. So these are some of the common assessment that you can do, be it visual by yourself, or you engage a professional who has been trained in some of these things to do that for you in that aspect. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor.
That is the one for
Araba.
that wanted to know, yes, for Araba. And somebody was also asking about, do brick houses also have this kind of harmful substances? Of course, the brick in itself might not contain a harmful substance, but then how you employ the building in terms of construction, because you know sometimes you have the brick building in itself, and some even apply paint to it, or some even apply varnish. Okay, so in this way, definitely you might be having certain elements, okay, of these VOCs also lurking within, and that undue heat that will be released or will have that kind of contact will now emit this kind of substance within your space. So it's how you treat the brick in itself in terms of its finishing that will determine. And it's not only the chief material in terms of brick, but then you are also using other materials, okay? You might be painting the beams and the columns. You might be using other materials for your ceiling and then your windows and etc. So it might be coming from multiple sources, not necessarily the brick in itself, you know, in that way. And someone was talking about plaster board, okay? Plaster board used as ceilings. And plaster board do not necessarily have, in terms of VOCs, okay, emitted. But then during its, okay, you know, you have this kind of powdery form when you are installing, okay, either using the chiseling or just taking them apart and those things. You have to be careful as to how you apply your safety gear in order to inhale some of these dust or particles that can actually cause irritation into your lungs and then leak there, for which there might be small traces of these elements that are there, but not necessarily, it doesn't have this kind of high concentration when it comes to this material in itself. And somebody was talking about houses closer to toilet facilities. It depends on how close it is. You're talking about pungent smell. Okay, I don't know how you can engineer some of these smell, but of course, then you have got to do with how can you employ mechanical ventilation systems in order to improve the air quality within your space. Of course, if you want to avoid it, then it depends on how your windows are positioning towards this building or towards this toilet facility. So some of them, or you can also improve the way the toilet ventilation system has been done in a way. What type of toilet facility? Is it the KVIP type? Is it the one that has got to the improved vent pit and those things? Then you look at how it has been constructed in order to divert. If it means that you have to improve on how the smell is channeled on. Perhaps you are in the windward side from where the wind is blowing from the toilet facility to your side in that aspect. You can use plants and then trees to break these kinds of pungent smell. by planting these kinds of sweet-scented plants, okay, and trees in order to filter the air for you in that aspect. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Doctor. We take a break. The show returns after this. Now, Zypes can be used to treat, that is dampness, and you can also use it to treat leakages and cracks in buildings. Zypes is a #1 waterproofing agent and also repairs and used for the maintenance of buildings. So call us for your Zypes product to be used on your foundation, that's basement, swimming pools. You can also talk about your concrete reservoirs and septic tanks. Call us on this number 020-11-0328, 020-11-0328, or 0243-426171. Locate us around Dabaka, close to the Cora Paint office. Doc, you started mentioning some of the materials that we use within our buildings that, can be toxic. You've mentioned the plastic TNJ. You went on to talk about lead being in paint and also asbestos still being used. Are there other materials that you want to mention before we move on from that?
I would say that any material that employs, as a finish, for example, if the common materials that we use in the building construction industries, even concrete, concrete, not the traditional concrete. I'm talking about the ones that you have admixtures, or additives, These are chemicals that also have these kinds of volatile organic compounds within them. There are types of concrete that you need, for certain foundations or certain kinds of strength that is needed. And then you have these chemicals or additives that are added to it, either to improve the strength or to improve the curing, process, in that aspect. These chemicals also have these kinds of VOCs within them. And so its application and its use should be taken into consideration, And for example, if care is not also taken, even after its application, and for example, you have this a rising dam taking place within this concrete, will actually hasten the emittance of these gases, and these compounds within the space or the occupant space in that aspect. So yes, anything that has got to do with, I've already mentioned paints and I've already mentioned adhesives, and I've mentioned solvents.
But let me ask this, with POP, with plasterboards, you are talking even about concrete, you are mentioning the use of blocks. Do we have any challenge health-wise using these materials?
No, there's no challenge. With all these things, if care is taken, you don't have a problem. So the #1 thing is to follow instructions, to follow safety precautions, to follow the installation manual, on how to do things. For example, how do you ensure your safety when you are mixing concrete or using certain forms of compounds or additives or substances or chemicals? Even how do we even apply paints or coatings, on our finishes without necessarily having a problem in terms of our health, effects. So once these things are followed to the letter, then there wouldn't be any problem in that aspect. So I would say that for all materials, many of the materials that are found within our spaces, be it doors, be it window, even curtains, even curtains. There was this research that I was reading whereby they said that for a PVC shower, when hot water is released into it and then you are showering, it can emit as many as 80 harmful compounds, within your space in that aspect. So you can imagine, But yes, in spite of all these things that we are having, there has been a lot of improvement because now there are alternatives, on the market where you have non-VOCs. Non-VOCs means that you have materials that actually do not contain at all, all these volatile organic compounds, So you may have PVCs that do not contain volatile organic compounds, but of course they're expensive. You may have paints that do not contain volatile organic compounds, but they are expensive, So when you are going to buy certain products, and that is why engaging a consultant is important, and discussing, okay, what you need actually. But sometimes they may also gloss over it, but when you specify and tell the person that, yes, I need this specification and I need these kinds of materials which are absent, okay, because I don't have these kinds of, I don't want these kinds of harmful materials or substances to be within my space. So as much as possible, get these materials and the alternatives for me in that aspect. And definitely that is where then you will be using the appropriate materials in order to minimize some of these things, okay, in that aspect. Even flooring materials, okay, for example, the vinyl that we use and even the carpets, okay, that we use in that aspect also have these harmful substances. That includes formaldehyde, toluene, and xylene, okay. These are harmful substances or chemicals and compounds that are found within them. You may be surprised. You may think that, yes, you have a beautiful carpet, okay, that is within your space. That then when, okay, it's exposed to some of these kinds of toxic substances and excessive heat, definitely it is emitting these kinds of substances that we use in order to achieve its finish and then color and etc.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. At this juncture, you can also call and be part of the discussion ongoing here in the studio. So, Doctor, my last question to you would be, what are some of the preventive measures? What are some of the measures we can put in place to mitigate and also avoid these a building becoming a toxic house or a toxic building?
All right. For this, you will say, what are the good practices?
Yes.
What is it that we can do in order to safeguard or even minimize to the barest minimum some of these toxic found within our spaces? Yes. The first one is to use less toxic building materials, as I just said, the alternatives. In the market, okay, in the building shops and etc., find the alternatives, read the manuals. You can do, nowadays, the world is in our hands or in our palm. By the touch of your phone, the button, you can just search for it. If it's a flooring material that you are searching, search for flooring materials that have no VOCs within them. And you'll be surprised that you find alternatives, okay, in them. So you consult this, you do this in consultation with your professional, your building professional, and then you'll be sorted out. Again, avoid to a lesser extent activities that emit, okay, or let out vapor, moisture, or dampness, or pollutants within your home. And this is what I call occupational habits, okay? So what is it that you do in the house that can actually precipitate, okay, or engender some of these emittances, okay? Excessive heat, I was talking about it. In your kitchen, what kind of finish do you have, okay? Do you have even an extractor to take care of this vapor and the heat that will be built up within that space? How do you have activities and organize your spaces such that you have even cross ventilation, which is so much important for us in the tropics, okay? So that there's that heat exchange of fresh air in that space. In that aspect, even if there's a presence of harmful substances, then it's taken away from that point, And then ensure proper protection from outside pollutants, okay? And this is what I was mentioning, that you have to use this buffer where you plant, okay, trees. Research has shown that trees alone can filter the air 50% of the harmful substances that we have. So it's important to also do that. Once you do this, then immediately you have taken care of the presence, 50%, reducing your harmful substances within your space, okay? And then your mechanical ventilation equipment should always have a heat recovery exchange. And this is important. That actually will make sure that the air quality is improved in that aspect. And of course, you use your safety gear and then your protective mask when you are doing any form of repair and maintenance within your space, because in the essence, in the process of doing this, you may be tearing off certain things and emitting this kind of powdery substances and etc., even solvents and some things that we use to dissolve. For example, paint, we bring solvent and then we are dissolving.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Let me go to Alexander from Cape Coast. Hello, Alexander.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Alexander.
Sorry, I didn't join the conversation early, yet I've learned a lot. But my simple question to Doc is that these days, you see most buildings are using, or owners are using marble stones to do the exterior. Some are even using it as a decorative piece in the interior. So I want to know how safe that architectural design these days is. And then the second one is the mention of asbestos sheet, the one you normally call the slate. These days, the Cora paints have some mechanism that they use to color it or they seal it. I want to know, is it the best alternative, or we should go back to the roofing sheet that we are familiar with?
Okay, thank you very much, Alexander. Thank you very much. So please do not call the WhatsApp number, but call the number on your screen to also be part of the discussion. Doc.
Yeah.
Alex is asking about marble stones being used. Is it toxic? And also goes on to ask further questions about asbestos.
Yeah, marble stones, I wouldn't say that it has a high concentration of VOCs, but definitely because there's always a decoration. You know, glazing in itself, even pottery, okay, the kinds of colors that they use, this pigmentation contains these kinds of VOCs, okay. So definitely the rule of thumb is to have cross ventilation in that aspect. Definitely then you are minimizing the kind of effect that you are going to have within the space. But it has to a minimal effect, this kind of VOCs present in them, in that aspect. And then coral paints or paints that actually they use to coat on asbestos. Okay. I would say that as much as possible, avoid the use of asbestos, especially for human occupation, okay? If you are using it for something else, fine, but for human occupation, for your homes and for places of living, I would advise you not to use the asbestos as far as possible, and as much as possible, don't use the asbestos in whichever way. Because just as I was telling you, the heat that we have, especially nowadays, it's even worse, you know, places that we use not to even use air conditioning, now everybody is going for air conditioning. It shows you how hot the environment has become. And that also makes the environment more susceptible to some of these VOCs being emitted into the spaces. Yes, Imran.
Okay. Hello, Jemima.
Yes, please.
How is Takrade?
I'm fine.
Okay. Yes. Go on with your submission, Jemima.
Yes, I just want to ask Doc about using POP cement to do your ceiling.
Okay, thank you very much, Jemima. So I entreat us not to call the WhatsApp numbers, but to call the number on our screen. Doc, Jemima wants to know POP powder being used. Is it toxic?
Yeah, POP not necessarily has these kinds of volatile organic compounds, but you know, in its formation, if you have seen how POPs are made, okay, all these powdery forms. In fact, it is advisable that when you are doing some of these things, it should be in the exterior of the building, but most of them will do this formation within the interior space, okay? And especially, of course, you are not there, but those who are using it, okay, this powdery substance also is not good, okay, to be inhaled within. So these compounds also find themselves within the respiratory system and also causes these kinds of respiratory disease. So when it is done, of course, definitely you are not going to have a problem in that aspect. But then when it is time for you to do, for example, there's a leakage and then you are repairing, then definitely you have to avoid as much as possible these powdery substances getting onto you or you inhaling it. Definitely then it's going to have a health hazard on you.
Thank you very much. So let me have Mr. Architect. Hello, Dawson.
Charles Dawson.
Charles Dawson, sorry.
Yes. Right, I've really enjoyed and learned so much. I want to find out how long it should take somebody to wait before entering a newly built, painted house.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Dawson. So, Doc, in 20 seconds, we have to do this.
Yeah, I will say that read the manual, okay, of the paint, the manufacturer, to tell you exactly, because it varies. But for me, my rule of thumb is that if you are going into a new house, definitely by the time they finish the painting, allow a minimum of 48 hours, okay? And then ventilate the space. Don't close the windows while you are waiting, but at least just ventilate it. Make sure that there's exchange, constant exchange within that 48 hours. in order to take care of all these kinds of substances that might be lurking within the space in itself.
Doc, in 20 seconds, your final words as we wrap up the show.
Yeah, my final word is that a healthy house, okay, engenders a healthy living. So let us, as much as possible, make sure that we use the appropriate materials, the appropriate professionals, okay, and then consult a lot when we are putting up one of the most valuable properties that we want to have in terms of even dreams, okay. So once we're able to do that, then definitely we are going to live in a healthy house. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So his name is Architect Dr. Joe Ejay Dankwa. He's a principal architect and also a senior research scientist with the CSIR, that is Building and Road Research in Kumasi. A very big thank you to you, sir, and also a big thank you to our viewers. A big thank you to Alice Coker, Meshach Edu Okai, Audrey Dushe Kafui Ohene, and from myself here, the rest of the team, we say have a very good week.